Hey, Vincent, how are you?
Hi, Aris. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I am so good. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
We have known each other for a hot minute.
I feel like our orbits have circled each other for about 20 years.
Yes.
And then we became friends probably like 10 years ago-ish. And I haven't seen you
in what
about
feels
a year and
like,
a half, 2 years. But it feels longer, so yes.
Yeah, like 25 years.
We have a history.
We do have a history. In fact, we're going to get into that. But for the audience that might not know you and your work, let's talk a little bit more about you first. Tell me about you. Where did you grow up?
I was born in New York, the Bronx. Lived in the Bronx until I was 10. Family moved us to Connecticut. Not great. Lived there for about 10 years. Moved to upstate New York for a bit, and then in 2006, I moved back to the Bronx. So I've been in the Bronx since 2006. My father was a drummer and a singer, so I always grew up with music. He leaned much more towards classic rock, and I leaned heavily for a while into musical theater, and then singer-songwriter stuff, and now I just kind of love those two very, very much. And he would always kind of be like, can't you add some electric guitar? Can't you learn how to riff on the guitar? I was like, nope, I can't. But he is definitely someone that taught me a lot about music earlier on in life.
Tell me more about your influences, inspirations. Who are the musicians that, when you look to the type of artist that you've become, who helped form that?
Well, there's a lady that you may not have heard of. Her name is Paula Cole. I mean, she's just a tremendous writer and vocalist and musician, and someone who understands music and doesn't just kind of throw it together haphazardly. One of the few artists that my dad and I actually agreed on, because he was always very much like, you listen to such boring... He had a lot of opinions, okay? And whether it was musical theater or the singer-songwriters that I admired growing up, he was always like, nah, that's too soft. You need to listen to more of this stuff. But when it came to Paula Cole, he was like, oh, wait, no, this one's actually really good. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So she, I think, would definitely be high up on the list of influences. Ani DeFranco would definitely be an influence. Ingrid Michaelson I love. Beth Hart I love. Tegan and Sarah. All of those women, and I guess whoever influenced them, it just kind of trickles down. So any and all of their influences have somehow become my influences too.
Let's touch upon Paula a little bit more. Firstly, I do think, as someone who's listened to your work, that there is a next-gen effect of, I feel the emotional depth in the songwriting. Some of the choices of minimalism in terms of like really letting the instrumentation speak for itself and not overwhelming the arrangement. I feel like you've really taken some notes and some study on even Paula's production style, which I really appreciate in your work. And one of the things that you and I have in common is also that my mom was also very opinionated, and one of the few people that she liked that I liked was Paula. What's fascinating about our connection with Paula is, and I have to tell the story for the people that don't know this, is that the reason that me and Vincent truly became friends, and not just knew of each other through the circle, is I was talking with Paula after a show at one of her meet and greets, and she insisted that we become friends. She said, "Do you know Vincent? Surely you must know Vincent. I really think that you two should be friends." And, you know, when Paula Cole says something, you listen.
You do it.
You know, like, I wasn't going to say no, like, that'd be weird. But I think that it's one of the biggest gifts Paula has given me, not just her music, but also, like, opening up opportunities for an amazing friendship. And that follows through to the recording that we did together, which is called Missing, which touches upon a little bit of what we've been speaking about, our parents. They both have passed. Your dad passed in...
My dad passed in 2015.
And my mom in 2012. We feel that same vibe, and there's some similarities there in that experience. When we sat down to write that track, we definitely had that in mind. It wasn't a session where we said, hey, let's just sit around and see what comes to mind. We knew we had something to say. You've done that a couple times with your body of work, especially on the new album.
924.
Talk about how grieving has played out and healing has played out in the music creation process for you.
I do tend to lean into sadder songs, either in lyrical content or in just melody and tone. But especially with the passing of my father, I was like, oh, there were just a lot of feelings that were happening, and my psychiatrist at the time said I was suffering from complicated grief. So there was a lot of, talk therapy, medication, and journaling. That was their big thing, journal. And I was like, I don't really do the journaling thing. They were like, well, do you write at all? And I was like, well, I'm a songwriter. And they were like, well, why don't you, it just makes good sense. So it started off with kind of just like one tune that I wrote about my dad, but then like these other things just kind of came up, and it was like, it's so easy. Well, for me, I find it easy to write about those sadder things. I find it easy to write about regret, and I find it easy to write about those moments that you so vividly remember because they were such a shock to your system. And so those songs came out pretty easily. And so then I was like, I don't want to make a whole album of Dead Dad songs. That's too much. But I was like, there's like this nice little collection here, and I'm still writing less about that grief and more about just depression and grief in general, of losing things that you thought you would never lose, not necessarily a person, but just a way of getting older and letting go of certain expectations. So there were those two sections, and then I was like, well, I don't want to have this whole downer of an album happening. So there's this third part of my life that is quite beautiful and quite lovely. If this album already has two sections and it needs a third to round it out, those three sections kind of flow nicely in that you have your sadness, and you have your dealing with your sadness, which are all a part of life. You can't avoid it, but don't end on that note, because there is joy, and there is love, and there is beauty. And so I wanted to make all three of those things a part of the new album.
Speaking of numbers and dates, let's talk about 1950.
Yes. My father was born in 1950, and I had, my guitar melody down, guitar chords and the melody down, and I was like, I don't know what I want to say about it. And so I just, I was looking at pictures of him as a kid, and I was like, what? I know he was born in 1950. I know he was born in the Bronx. And so I did a Google search. I was like, what was happening in New York City on 1950, November 18th? What was the weather like? What was the headline? And so I just kind of made that little piece of for him, about him. I think he definitely had some undiagnosed depression and anxiety issues. So when I say these next things, I don't mean it to be insulting to him or his memory, but he was a very negative person at times. It was always the world is out to get me. I just don't have the luck. I don't have the this. I don't have the that. And he would kind of say to me, I think I passed that down to you, son. I gave you the DiGeronimo name, so you have that black cloud now. And so I kind of put together all of those things, like this is what was happening in and around New York City when he was born, and maybe I am part of that. Maybe if he felt like he didn't have a chance, then maybe I don't have a chance. I don't know. Maybe I do. But it came out beautiful. I'm really proud of that one.
New York City, 1950 in the rain. Joyful music, mid-November 18th day. Like a lightning bolt, a force of nature burned the ground. Angered Holy Ghosts, they rallied faster than the speed of sound. He never had a chance so high. I never had a chance. But what we loved is his life.
9/24. I'm trying to reclaim the date. I would, it's always going to be a crappy day. It's always going to be that day where you're kind of like, everything changed. But now there's a little piece of it that might be, well, this nice little nugget came out of it. So that's why I decided to name the album 9/24 and release it on 9/24.
You and I both are in a similar boat right now with the way we're dealing with our grief and healing through our music and through the work that we're putting out with both our albums. I similarly, obviously, have been through a parallel of those experiences where the dates become so triggering and traumatic. It's like that for many, many people with loss and with grieving. And what you just shared is one of the major tools to cope, really, because that date is always going to be shitty. We know that. It's never going to be like, wow, let's celebrate. But it's about bringing in the good to be with the negative feelings, so you're not just stuck in that trauma, and you can start to process, and you can start to live and start to heal and move on. When we wrote Missing, it was with that intention, giving people a song with the emotion behind it that gives them the depth of the grieving, but also the message that it's okay to start letting go of the pain and to start celebrating some way, somehow, the life of that person and your love of that person. Tell me about how you were inspired by that and what brought those lines out for you.
Well, again, write what you know. So when we got together to do a song, we were kind of like, these are a lot of feelings that we have with a lot that we can talk about. So we kind of just put it all into that, and it was a matter of, there's a lot of confusion around it, that how did certain things unfold? How did it get to where it got to? And so there's that really unsure component of it, and I feel like that comes out in the song that we wrote together and in other material, and I think that it's just something that people can hopefully relate to. I think a lot of people might be able to listen and say, oh, I do know exactly what it is to kind of sit in a space and go, but where did this come from? Where did we go from? I think that those are easily accessible.
I agree, and I think that there's a power with the vulnerability and honesty we brought to that song. Because, although we did set out the intention to do something specific, there was no pretense to, we have to make it this or it should be that. It was just our raw, general, open, bleeding hearts at that time dealing with those things. And I think that it stands out for the listener. We'll, of course, play a clip right now.
And then it came without warning, just like a knife through the heart. this crazy thing we call morning. It's tearing us apart.
Now look how far we're falling in this journey to find a way out of the darkness. But I'm still searching for light,
'Cause I keep
missing your love, missing your heart, and I'm wishing for peace, some sweet relief. Shine on me,
missing your love,
still missing your face, missing your touch, your sweet grace. I'm wishing for peace, so
sweet leaves to shine.
What is grief and grieving?
A lot of it has to do with accepting reality, because there are these things that happen that you know in abstract is eventually going to happen, but then when it actually happens, it takes on a whole different life. So there's the accepting of the reality for what it is, and there's no changing it. You know, as much as we say, oh, if I could just say one thing differently, or if I could have one more day, or if I could have just done this differently, it doesn't matter, because we don't have those those resources of time travel. So it's accepting reality for what it is and trying to work through that the best that we can.
In your toolbox and resource kit of tools for grieving, you mentioned talk therapy, you mentioned music, journaling, which not so much, but that leads to songwriting for you. What has been the one that's been the most helpful in your healing process?
Aside from songwriting, or
whichever?
I would definitely say the songwriting, yeah. I just love music so much, you know, as do you, as do so many other people. So there are just these components to it that lend itself so nicely to healing, getting out of your own head, confronting something that you feel that you need to confront that you might not be able to in another way. So there are just a lot of moving parts to it that make it so helpful. Whether it's writing a lovely, you know, chord progression on the piano, or coming up with a clever, emotional or impactful lyric. Hopefully the two meet and marry each other. But it's just so, it's healing, and I know that sounds super cliche, but it really is. It's very cathartic.
Okay, so there's another song that we gotta chat about, and I think it is a parallel. It deals with the idea of loss and grieving, but not necessarily a person, but the life that you used to have. Let's talk about that.
The Life I Loved. It is on the new album, and you, my love, have some guest vocals on it.
I do.
First of all, you have a very unique and distinct voice. And what I mean by that is there are some artists that you can listen to and you kind of go, is that so-and-so or is that so-and-so? Or it might be so-and-so. But you have a voice where the second you hear it, you're like, oh no, that's Aris, right? And so when I was recording The Life I Loved, I was like, I really want, not specifically that song, in general, I was like, I really want to have Aris do something on this album, because I think we just work really well together. We have very similar sensibilities. Different sounds, but they work together. They blend really nicely. And it was when I was putting together The Life I Loved and fleshing that out, I was like, oh, this is probably the song that he should sing on. And I sent it your way, and you were like, oh, I do like that. And so
Yes. What I love about it is it does talk about that sentiment. Sure, it could be a person or it could be a situation, but it's really the way it used to look, and looking at the dusty pictures on the shelf and really not recognizing your life anymore. It doesn't look anything like it used to, and really knowing how much you loved it the way it was, and not really knowing how you feel about it right now, but knowing you probably don't feel that way. So I was all up in that, and I was going through a breakup at the time, so it really pulled at me in a way where I connected very deeply with it.
Keep a smile on my face to cover up and leave no trace. You see no anger and no dread, 'cause the life I love to love is dead. The life I love to love is dead. The life I love to love is dead. It's not enough to be alive, when any day now we could die. These dusty pictures on the shelf, see, I don't recognize myself. I don't recognize myself. I don't recognize myself.
Tell me about the inspiration for that song.
I don't lump it into the Dead Dad third of the album. It is in the depression, grieving third of the album, but it has a little bit of both, because when my father passed away, I did a 180. I was pursuing theater at the time. My undergraduate degree was in theater. I was a working, mostly auditioning actor, singer-songwriter, and I had my day jobs, right? I would work the front desk at a salon. I would do Mommy and Me music classes and art classes and all that stuff. But my trajectory was in performance, theater, and songwriting. I was actually putting together material to audition for NYU's vocal performance master's program. And when my dad passed away, he was an artist. He was a musician with no plan B. He made it work, but there was no plan B. And there was a lot of hardship and a lot of things that my sisters and I knew about growing up that children need not know about. You know, we didn't need to know about financial strain and all of those things that are adult problems, you know? So there were all of these things happening around the time of my father's passing that I was like, how could I possibly continue to pursue performance, either in theater or as a songwriter? How could I think of taking out more loans to get a master's degree in this? Like, I was good at the education. I was good at the pre-K stuff that I was doing. I was doing a lot of, 2-year-old and 3-year-old classes, academic stuff, music stuff, art stuff, physical fitness stuff. And I was like, I'm really good at this, and I like it. I don't misunderstand. I'm not like, oh, boo-hoo, this is the avenue I turned down. I like it, and I'm good at it. And the families responded, and the children responded. So when my father passed, and finances come into light, and the fact that he never had a plan B, I instantly was like, you know what? I can't pursue a master's degree in something like vocal performance or theater. You know what? I'm good at education. I will become a teacher. And I've been working as a teacher since.
Wonderful. Well, it's wonderful that you not only contribute to society and community as a whole, as a singer-songwriter and performer, but that you're able to shape the minds of young ones. So it's wonderful to hear that. You and I are both from New York City, and we may be from different boroughs, but we are both city boys. And, New York is a wonderful place, but it's also some place that can pull the rug out from under you sometimes. Tell me a story, or share with me an experience of that nature.
I love New York. Period. So much to do for everyone. Love it. Never gonna leave it. However, when you live in the Bronx and you don't come from money, you work paycheck to paycheck. You're from a paycheck to paycheck family. That's just who you are, right? And you're pursuing this thing called art. And you're like, how do I make ends meet without a security net, without a family to fall back on or a trust fund to fall back on? So living in the Bronx and traveling into Manhattan daily, sometimes multiple times a day, it adds up. Metro cars are expensive. Voice lessons expensive. Acting coaches expensive. Sheet music expensive. The reproduction of headshots expensive. Paying a photographer to take your headshot. It's all very, very, very expensive. And there got to be a time where I was like, I'm essentially a full-time auditioner with no salary to do this, Not everyone is born into money. Not everyone is super, super lucky and has a trust fund to fall back on. But there was a time where I was like, how do people do this? It's insane to me. And a comedian that I very much admire was on a podcast one time, and she was like, anybody that tells you that they, moved either to New York or Los Angeles with $5 in their bank account, she was like, they're full of shit. There's definitely a support system there that they don't like to talk about, because that's not as interesting a story as I moved out to LA with $10 in my pocket and nothing else.
Or they're skipping the part where they worked at a strip club.
Correct. Yes.
No shame.
No.
But again, there's some
I would work at a
missing,
strip club if people would pay for this, but I don't think it. But I digress.
I agree. I feel that, it's something that we all feel as independent artists, is the investment in the art. And especially in a place like New York, where the cost of living is so high, that then you really are making sacrifices with, where am I putting my money? Is it going back into my digital appearance, like you said, with headshots, or recording? Recording is not a free thing, especially when we're releasing music that we want to be heard and last the test of time. That has to be recorded properly, and it takes time to get things right. So yeah, there's a real devaluation in art right now as well. How are you reaching your fans, and how can fans reach you to support your art?
I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and what just fell? My wallet just fell out of my ass. The back pocket. Anyway, sorry. You can cut all of this out. This is all edited out.
Clearly.
Now
we're not a live show. This is a good thing here.
It's fine. Okay. You can find me on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. So I'm all over the interwebs. I have all the streaming stuff, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all that folderol.
And people can also buy music directly through you, through CD Baby. You have previous physical releases. If people want to purchase CDs, they can contact you through your social media.
Absolutely, yes, thank you. 924 is my third album. So I do have 2 other albums available through CD Baby or Apple Music, however you get your stuff. My Instagram is Vincent, Vincent, 9, Nine, 24, 924. And Twitter is just VPD81.
We'll also drop all that stuff in the links and comments.
Succinct that, but I don't know why I have so many different names and ways to find me. It's weird. I need a manager.
Well, if anyone's listening and wants to manage Vincent, find him on one of those platforms and reach out.
My next album, I want it to be nothing but light pop music. Synth, drum machine, happy pop music. Can't say my dad would necessarily appreciate that either. But it's a different direction. And it's a little less in the sad place and a little more in the happy love place.
Electrified when his fingers are touching mine. Let me pretend you follow me and give me every little thing that I need. In my head, my thoughts, you know, you write me everywhere that I go. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, everywhere that I go. Wasn't supposed to be, you're not the type for me. But if you love to like me, I'll learn to let go. I'm too young to feel this old, to feel unwanted, broken-hearted, and to feel alone. Say I tried to feel alive, to feel electrified when his fingers are touching mine. Let me pretend you follow me and give me every little thing that I need. In my head, my thoughts, you know, you write me everywhere that I go. It may feel weird, I know you're here, leading me to fall into his arms. When he appeared, I could see clear. You're letting me in right where I belong. Let me pretend you follow me and give me every little thing that I need. In my head, my thoughts, you know, you write me everywhere that I go.
The conversations continue on my podcast, Through the Storms. Stream new episodes on Spotify and www.throughthestorms.info.